2025 is setting out to be a rather interesting year for space game genre, both in innovative new titles as well as overall releases. Even during NextFest, a few interesting titles popped up, so let's take a look at upcoming finished games, new and old early access ones, as well as some notable releases from last year's I didn't get to highlight. From a first-person asset flippy games with a promise to a full-fledged and fleshed-out productions with high quality, on par with mainstream, and whatever the hell this is. Alright then, let's start with the games that wouldn't be afraid to call themselves finished when they actually see the light of day. The upcoming fully finished games. Starting off with A Falling Frontier, a space strategy game for the past few years that had been cooking behind the closed doors of the first-time Australian developer Stutterfox Studios and its publisher, Who Did Horse. For a good 6 years now, developers have been releasing videos on the progress of the game, completing it, which basically is a slow-paced combat action paired with the resource gathering and producing. The game is closer to a 4X game than a simple RTS. However, the polish of the game seems very impressive. And at this point, all that we're waiting for is these Aussies to finally announce the damn release date. From space grand strategy to more sci-fi drama, 11-bit Studios announced their latest game, Alters, a clone-based iteration of oneself's choice. Famed for their Frostpunk games, it'll be nice once more to have a sci-fi story with a little bit of bite.
The planet Yan is stranded on is home to a mysterious substance called Rapidium. With its use and the help of the quantum computer on board, Yan is able to create alternative versions of himself. The Alters.
Ultimately a resource management survival crafter type of a game that gives me a lot of Death Stranding vibes, but regardless, hell, you don't even need me explaining it, go check out the game's demo! Speaking of demos, during one of the recent Steam NextFests, I dragged myself through a bunch of working and not so working attempts at making a space game. Now, one of such games I was looking forward to the most was Jitter. Developed by a self-published Berko Games, this little wonder offers a simple but intriguing puzzling experience. Now, I genuinely was surprised how curious the game became just with a few mechanics and consistent art style. Oh god, it's the cutest little thing. Marvin, the 6-pixel guy. Though what made it a little bit more memorable was this.
The important thing is, yes, the intuitiveness of the game is there. And the thing that oftentimes is overlooked a lot.
Ah, no! I was praising it! Oh, god damn it. Now, I promise we'll get to real space games soon, but another game that took my interest was similarly monochromed Moonbase Lambda, a first-person survival horror type of game akin to Alien Isolation. Personally, I found this Thunderfox Studio game to be genuinely with good atmosphere and interesting style. Now, even if their official website is straight out of HTML's first coding lesson league, the game simply charmed me, and I want to share it. And it has a demo. Oh wait, no, it had a demo. Oh god damn it, did they remove it? Okay, you want a real space game? Well, here you go. Era 1, a game about spaceships and building them and then fighting with them. Well, anyways, Era 1 appeared recently from self-developed and published British team Complex, who had worked on Homeworld mods before? Well, damn. After what seems barely successful Kickstarter in 2022, this, much like Falling Frontier, seems to be a very polished game. Granted in a smaller scale, but I'll take quality over quantity. Well, anyways, Era 1 describes themselves as innovative space game that combines elements of real-time strategy, base building, space survival, and tactical battles. Players can customize their bases from scratch, construct various types of structures and warships, manage fleets, and engage in tactical space battles. Now, whether or not all that promise will be actually interesting to play, we'll see around in the July of this year when the game releases. And now on to some serious effort, Starminer. For the last little while, this third-person space mining game with Newtonian physics has been creeping into the view. With additional combat, trading and quests and a few more gimmicks, the main thing about the game is resource management and deep spaceship mechanics, power management, distribution, navigation and more. Developed by Serbian Cool and Good Games, a name that certainly invites comparisons, and published by Paradox of all people, this game, like a few I mentioned before, is in the same league of high quality and high polish. Plenty of mechanics that try to innovate, but will it actually be useful? We shall only see. Either way, the game, as its namesake, focuses on less explored facet of space games. You know, mining, and I'll be curious to see what it can do. Another game that creeped in my view was Capital Command. Very similar to Nebula's Fleet Command, both similar looking, hardcore combat management, almost simulators rather than space combat games, but there you go. Developed by Hellride Games and published by Hooded Horse, though this is not exactly my type of a game, I'm always fascinated by these proper hardcore games. A ship combat with tactical, almost strategic gameplay that reminds me quite a bit of Expanse. And finally, the last new game for the year, at least currently announced, is the sequel for Breathedge. If you, for some reason, haven't played the first game, like for example I did, just go and look at this!
It's probably the owner of the shuttle with paint. He was engaged in illegal pumping during the crash, judging by the traces of paint on his hands and a huge hose stuck to his face.
I'm done. Like, what more is there to say? Like, what the fuck more is there to say?
The first game is literally just a parody game about space, space games, the genre, and just a one big box of slapstick and comedy. Go play it, it's really good. Still, the way both games play is basically Subnautica in space, but the horror element replaced by constant gags and jokes. And yes, you'll get desensitized to it rather quickly in the first hour of gameplay or so. But the beautiful thing about this constant gag throwing at the screen is that it never gets boring and it constantly tries to get one on you. Be that exploding beef or using chicken for literally everything. And goddammit, in both games, the amount of effort these developers have placed in environmental storytelling is phenomenal. Again, go play. Oh, right. Breathedge 2. Right, it has a demo. Go play it! Now, speaking of Steam's Next Fest, while perusing the Space Sim category, a few games jumped out, and one such promising title was Blackstar Ranger. Yeah, it's yet another space combat game, I get it, but this game has a demo, so at the very least, developers are proud and confident in what they've made. So if nothing else, go check it out. Now, my first impressions for the game was that the ship turn rate was far too slow for a small fighter, but the drifting, as in the carried momentum between turns, it felt really nice. That or you're flying a brick with crappy thrusters. Either way, the controls need to be a bit more intuitive, but the core mechanics and flying, shooting, farting about are there. Very clean or minimalistic UI that makes you question, am I missing a couple of other things? But the fact is, for a simple combat-only game, this is really nice. Overall, the only thing that really sucks about it is the visuals. It reminds me of late 90s drab, brown and dark. And the final finished product, at least for now, for the year, is the Hyperion DLC for X4, which technically is a mini DLC, but still it's something. A new cool ship, a little bit of story, and there you go. For a rather low price, why not? But seriously, the newly updated flight mechanics for X4 have been really a nice step towards the right direction, even though you can still fart around in extreme speeds, even in combat. Alright, now that we got the finished titles out of the way, you know, the stuff that actually promised to do something properly, let's take a look at the crippled and mangled troglodytes masquerading as real boys. I mean, the game's announced this year for early access. Now then, starting off with the biggest release for the year, Space Engineers 2. Alright, so my first impressions were pretty knee-jerky at the time, and safe to say, shit. So let me be, like Louis Rossmann say, a full bitch and correct my comments. So then, first things first, Keensoft developers announced that the release of Space Engineers 2 in vertical slice segments is specifically to gauge the community response for the features, rather than having more finished stuff being released on the go. And this information was distributed through their community months in advance, and TheYamiks, being attention-losing magpie, also a prick, didn't really pick up on this properly. However, some of my critique still stands. If Keen Software is remaking their first game, which they basically are, but on a new engine, with new bells and whistles, this vertical slice 1, 2, 3 period feels kinda arbitrary and motivated more for money. See, if Space Engineers developers Keensoft wanted the community feedback so much to get the sequel right, like some of my commenters pointed out, just release a limited time, free and public demo, not charge money for it. Having this free public demo for a limited time only is guaranteed to get you the most feedback after all. However, having that upfront price tag mandatory, you'll get all the money 100% of the time, while feedback, well, it's additional extra. And honestly, I just don't like seeing any community for any game being used as free QA tester, let alone one that has to actually pay you first to even QA test for you. It's like a reverse job. But that said, Space Engineers 2 have earned enough goodwill and trust to allow some of it to burn for the sake of the sequel. See, I have very few doubts that Keensoft will pull some sort of a crap, and instead, over a period of next, let's say 5 years, continue to innovate and advance this voxel-based game. Additionally, they assured me that the first game would still get some patches, fixes, and even some new content updates. So, despite my critique, Space Engineers 2 have a bright future, even if it only comes after a few years when everyone outside of the community have forgotten about. God damn it, I just want a big bombastic knockout of the park launch without any ifs, ands, or buts. Is that really that much to ask? So last year I noticed Jump Ship appear on Steam, and luckily this year I even got to chat with developers. Hell, even play the game, or at least as much as there was. And I gotta say, this one, for good reason, is my personal favorite. Even if they're launching in early access first, Jump Ship looks, feels, and from my limited experience, will be a really good time. The Progalactic mixed with faster than light, that's how I would describe the game. The Swedish Keepsake Games have created already a very interesting and innovative space game that combines spaceship and first-person gameplay, a combined arms type of a deal, where you can leave the station and go fix something inside the ship, or walk on the hull, or even if you feel adventurous, detach yourself and board an enemy vessel attempting to cripple or destroy it manually. With loot and limited time spent in each zone, it really does feel like FTL. But from the first person, throw in some simplicity and intuitive controls, and boy, you really have become Deeper Galactic, but for spaceship fans, and I'm here for it. Right now though, the game is missing a few things, but developers are aiming for the release of first early access version on summer of 2025. Another game that recently entered the early access ring is simply named SpaceCraft. Developed and published by Shiro Games, there really is not much to say about this one. The pre-rendered trailer plus a few screenshots is all we really got, and from those you can interpolate whatever style of a thing you want. However, looking at Shiro's last bunch of games, there's a pattern emerging, and the style of a game you could expect. And honestly, I would not be surprised if this would be another one of those highly misleading trailers and/or games. Oh, wait, hold on. I actually found something. Right, so 6 days ago, they released something about this game. A video of seamless transition between space and planet. Cool. Alright, we'll see when the game comes out or we see more information about it. But at least the first signs are that it's not like their previous games, which is a good thing. And now for some old and released early access titles, the ones that either announced or showed themselves off in past few years, but have not released in public, or simply released late 2024. Now for example, Falling Frontier deserves to go higher because they did not announce early access, but instead would release as a fully proper game. So, got it? Let's go. A little while back, developers of indie game Qanga contacted me, and I figured this is as good a place as any to showcase it. However, when I touched it for the first time... Oh, god damn it, I'm being extremely mean. Okay, let's try this again. So essentially, developers are trying to make an open world where transitions between the planet side to space to different planet is completely seamless, which for an indie title really is respectable. But it just feels like a cobbled together plugins with some assets from the asset store. I really want to say more positive things about it, but as soon as I smell the lack of consistency and this asset flippy vibe, I just cannot. So don't take my word for it, they have a demo, please go check it out and make your conclusions yourselves. And speaking of barely cooked, another game I checked out in Steam Next Fest was a demo for WarpedSpace, and really, yeah, the only reason I'm including it is that the developer actually popped into my streams one day. So, the less I say, the better, so good luck developing. In the Black, TM is an intense multiplayer team-based online space combat simulator with laser-like focus on combat and serious respect for science. Features single-player and online co-op modes with robust customization options. Yeah, that's not me saying it, it's just the developer Impaler Studios that says about their own upcoming game of the last few years. Yeah, it's yet another one of those no release date games of the past few years, but I got a chance to play it, and in fact developers contacted me through the email, and since then I kinda wanted to include them.
So in regards to our combat system, everything is super detailed simulation. It's all component-based damage, and as your components either take damage or as they get destroyed on the internals of your ship, they'll actually stop functioning, they'll stop working. And that's a really important aspect to creating a simulator rather than just arcade-style game.
Mainly a space combat game that suffers from somewhat unintuitive controls, but overall depth of mechanics is there, with a more realistic approach to physics rather than arcade style. Seriously though, the game does try to do a little bit of cinematic style, but at the same time audio does not have any post-processing, especially for the comms, the mechanics need serious iteration for more intuitiveness, and UI always needs a little bit of refined touch. Now the interesting part came when I tried to look up the updates on Steam, and looking on YouTube also yielded latest update being a year ago. In their official website, the latest patch or news article was in 2020. Just 2020. Is this abandoned? Now looking at the community discussion on the Steam, latest conversation literally was asking the same question, which the developer actually answered, and with the LT's video covering it. Oh boy, yeah, that's not really much of an answer. So, looking at the Kickstarter's latest update, it was on December last year, and something apparently is happening for the early access. So, whether or not it comes, well, good luck, either which case. But do update your shit, damn it! Speaking of yet another space combat game, Hunternet Starfighter, a game I previously have covered before. Now, seriously, I'd like to say more than just, hey, it looks promising, it looks cool, but has no release or demo, which is the case for this game. Also, the way Hunternet is being funded reminds me a lot of Star Citizen, but mostly in a good way. Still, Hunternet at least stands out with a very refined mechanics and visuals, a little bit arcadey, but the core mechanics and physics are there and continue to be a delight to check out. Blackouts depending on your G-forces, a ship that doesn't fight you on every turn with some weird mechanics, it's just a solid space combat game with smooth mechanics. Nothing more, nothing less. And the last update on Indiegogo was at the start of the year, and similarly videos reflecting on YouTube that as well. Now all that we just simply need is a finished game, god damn it! The Star Trek from Wish.com, the Temu Trek. Now, while it's really interesting to see a fully decked out and operational spaceship interior, when there's not much else, similarly, well, there's not much else that you could say about Starship Simulator. I don't know, maybe I'm just simply frustrated to see these guys keep modeling this space whale year after year after year and not really doing anything with it. Now, it's absolutely impressive the amount of modeling work that has gone into this, and actually,
delve behind any wall panel and you'll find the ship's genuine structural framework, all designed in CAD software right down to the individual bolts and weld lines.
now, funny jokes aside, the problem with these game projects is always the time. For massive game projects, it's the failure to give the developers time to make the game, but for small indie games, it's always sitting around never finishing anything until one day you got to go back to your real day job after the meager fan funding or interest has run out. Remember, back in the 90s and early 2000s, games would get fully developed with intricate details and features for at least the time. Developers would push out new features each month, if not weeks. Now, granted, in a barely tested fashion, but as long as the game was fun, it would work. So where does that leave the behemoth of a Starship? Well, guys, for the love of space Jesus, how many years will you develop this? But seriously though, do feel free to check out the demo, it's pretty interesting. Now then, another game releasing late last year in early access is Breachway. Yeah, does anyone smell Faster Than Light in 3D with the deck builder mechanics? A kind of a card-based battler, and frankly, I like the simplicity of these types of games. No, seriously, there is something elegant in limited options when done right. And though I'm not a fan of the UI, I'd say it'd be a great thing for this game to have a demo. Now, for a brief reprieve, let's turn around and beat the yearly dead horse for a bit. Starting with the deadest horse, the mare we once called Kerbal Space Program 2. Yeah, it's still deader than an infant being curb stomped. Developer studio closed, all developers fired. The publisher gutted and also dead. Thanks 2K, we really liked how you took our money and just fucked off. However, the latest news apparently is that Haveli Equity have purchased Private Division and its properties. Now what the hell does that mean? Who knows? Now what I know for sure is Kerbal 2 is still dead, and unless something groundbreaking happens, we all got swindled by 2K, and Kerbal 2 is literally the worst case in the abandonedware category. Thanks, 2K. Again. Starbase, yes, the competitor voxel space building game that had genuinely good legs, art style and even mechanics, last year announced that they were continuing development, and I thought this would be a glimmer of success snatched from jaws of defeat for Frozen Byte Studios. Sadly though, it's been 10 whole months since their announcement on getting back on the horse, only for us to realize that outside of a test server, the last real update for the game was 20 months ago. And even if you are the kind of a naive sucker who holds out hope like some sort of a crypto idiot, the last patch/hotfix was 6 months ago. And you know, I genuinely wanted this game to succeed, but it's kinda hard to ignore the Steam reviews calling it abandonware. Yay, early access. Squadron 42, the single-player portion of Star Citizen, is set to release for 2026. Presumably. Now, I'm not a betting man, but I'm taking bets for delays. Anyone's got 1, 2, 3 years? Let's make it fun. List your best guess down below. How long will it be delayed this time? And finally, here's something positive. A little project I spotted a little while ago that you can only find on YouTube. No Time Left. FTL-inspired spaceship piloting management type of an open world game. Now, frankly, all of this might have changed by now, but frankly what grabbed my attention was this game's attempt to portray black holes correctly. Add some more hardcore spaceship power management and environmental effects, and you got something rather interesting in the works. Though the last video update from the developer was about 10 months ago, seriously, best of luck making something interesting. In fact, I'll leave all the links down below in the description for all the games I covered today, so go check them out. Oh, and since we had a few really nice releases from last year and the year before that, I thought that you could use a few good news and good games to end this list with. So, here are some cool things you might have missed. We start off with a Void crew, a first-person co-op spaceship combat, repairing, shooting, looting, survival type of a thing. But hold on, this looks a lot like Jumpship. Or is Jumpship copying these guys? Hold on, aren't they both just simply copying Deep Rock Galactic? Jesus, how incestuous is this genre? Well, either case, this always co-op mandatory game offers spaceship combat, EVA, maintenance of your ship, looting, survival, and everything you can imagine around your crew and vessel. Basically a Sea of Thieves, but in space. Well, I guess the sucky part is that the game is really designed for co-op, and playing alone, well, good luck with that. And also the lighting and color scheme for the game is pretty annoying, making me think that I turned off the shadows. So grab a few friends or dungeon slaves and you'll have a good time. It's seriously cool to see space games have spaceships with interiors and fixing, maintaining those ships and actually manning the guns and hell doing EVA being actually fun tasks of the game. Imagine that! What an epiphany! Now, space exploration has always been at the back burner for most space games, and it's nice to see some dedicated titles for space exploration. Now, even if it is indie games that focus on the task of scanning and gathering data from planets. In the recent Steam Next Fest, I spotted a game called Planet Scanner, a sort of a job simulator style of a game, and I thought it deserved some highlighting, even if it released late last year. Go poke it and see what you think. Starcom. Yeah, well, it's kinda hard not to call it a less pretty, but still functional Star Sector clone. Now, while I'd like to label it something different, is it really? Now, you could say that, oh, well, no, it's a sequel to their previous game, The Nexus, or a homage to Escape Velocity, but honestly, I'm having trouble seeing it. Either which case, it's a good comparison. But hey, you can still build your own ship from segments and parts, which is a cool gimmick. Everspace 2. Oh, hell yeah! It's been a while since I had a good excuse to talk about this game. Late last year, the Titans DLC dropped, releasing a few new environments, story, and just good content overall. And more is coming with a Wrath of the Ancients expansion, adding what they call post-game story and areas. And so if you have never played Everspace 2, go! They have a demo, damn it! And speaking of DLC, how could you not mention the king of pumping DLC, the Stellaris? In the last 3 years of 2024, released 2 different ones, Grand Archives and Cosmic Storms. Am I missing anyone? Anyway, Stellaris is still producing quality content for good price. Doesn't feel like it needs to exploit their customers with the damn live service and microtransactions. Plus, it's my favorite X-Force strategy, so you know, there's that. Though come to think of it, I haven't touched it in a while. Nope, maybe I should. And speaking of strategy games, how could you not mention the Homeworld 3 releasing last year? And yeah, it's still a pile of shit. They pumped out 3 war games propping up DLCs that no one wanted in the first place as a game mode, and it was clear. Yeah, there's no recovery for Homeworld 3, it seems. But at least on the bright side, I'm providing valuable consumer advice. But speaking of, the place that Homeworld left by committing Sudoku was filled by an upstart, Sins of the Solar Empire 2. A lot smaller dev team on a lot smaller budget has created one of the best space strategy games. Basically what Homeworld 3 was supposed to be, but this is now Homeworld 3. Still, jokes aside, the game still stands on its own legacy, which is all the more refreshing to see. Now let's say that like me you enjoy the first person experience the most, well then give Entropy Center a go. Basically this game shamelessly copy-pastes so much of Portal that you can smell Aperture Science goo everywhere. However, these developers didn't really seem to know how to use Unreal Engine properly, so the lighting in the game is typically Unreal Engine-ish. Also, the sun is leaking. And the developers didn't really know how to properly model the levels, both in the placement and testing and iterations and blah blah blah. Basically, this is a very competent but extremely flawed attempt at recreating Portal. And it works! The story is super fun as you find yourself watching the Earth explode from the Moonbase. Yes, this is where the space stuff comes in, and you need to rewind time, which is this game's Portal replacement mechanic. The longer I play, the more interesting puzzles and the story story became. It started out as a complete copy-paste of Portal, but over time it grew into its own, both thanks to game mechanics as well as the story. So yeah, go check it out, and actually on Steam right now it's on really cheap. Oh, and it also has amazing mod support integration. Now, alternatively, if you still like the first person, but just want a little bit more simpler gameplay, or, well, simply walking simulator is up your alley, well then I would recommend nothing better than Invincible. Genuinely fascinating and gripping story that is worth every penny. Now, I do remember the game having demo once, but it's long gone, it seems. Well, either which case, it's definitely worth checking out. And there you go, Space Games of 2025. Some old, some new, some still thinking of existing. Seriously, if there is one lesson you can take away from this is develop fast. You don't have the time to be pedantic when you're an indie. Gameplay trumps everything and nail that first. But all that aside, which are the games you guys are looking forward to? Or better yet, which ones did I miss? And before you start mentioning, I know I left out a few asset flippy games, and you don't even want to know how many AI generated asset flip garbage is out there. So let's take more serious attempts at making a product than a goddamn joke, and highlight those. So if you feel sorry for my ass dredging through the slop bringing you this list, well, toss a buck on my Patreon, I really appreciate it there. But as for now, I'm done. I'm sick as I'm recording this. Jesus Christ, what am I doing?